Welcome to the Parenting Show. I'm Jennifer Anderson. You can thank your lucky stars that I'm sitting here with Alyson Schafer, who's a family counselor and my co-host, because I don't know the answers to all these questions, and you are the lady who can answer the questions about democratic parenting and helping parents ravel through all the thoughts, ideas, and the journey of parenting.
Yes, the madness that is parenting. Yes, happy to help, and I'm so thankful for community television for making this possible, that people can have access to an expert and that we can get into a dialogue together about all the common things that just make parenting both a joy but also a challenge, and to give some good tips and advice to make it a little smoother.
As a family counselor, as somebody
a mother of two, I have done some of the journey myself.
That's right. You are following Adler and the Adlerian Theory.
Right. And so, and many people don't recognize the name Alfred Adler, but Alfred Adler, Carl Jung, and Sigmund Freud were like the three big minds that really were intellectual sparring partners that moved psychology into the modern version that we know it today. And Adler's particular bent was really around cooperation. How do we get along in our marriages? How do we get along in our families? And he really did create an entire child guidance module. And so I'm third generation in my family to be trained and educated in this. And I've taught a lot of people that say, well, now that you say it, it sounds like common sense, but I wouldn't have thought it out myself. So yeah, so it's a way of raising kids without punishment and rewards that's focused on winning cooperation rather than forcing compliance and obedience.
Speaking of teaching, that's we are talking today about school issues and all the things that come with school, and certainly there's a lot of frustration that it goes around school, especially for kids.
Mm-hmm. And especially for teachers.
Yes. Well,
so I come from I am an educator. I train a lot of teachers. I have a nursery school that I've helped open and done the teacher training for, a whole family of teachers. So I have great respect for the work that teachers do. I also have great compassion for the fact that one of the pieces that they don't get trained on is child guidance. And research will show they spend 80% of their time in classroom correction rather than actually teaching kids. But we give them all these expectations of what they're supposed to do in their job description, and we give them no support. So, and at the same time, parents are handing off their kids for how many hours of the day where a lot of their prime socializing is happening. It's a big responsibility that you're delegating to another person. And, our school system fails a lot of our children. It really does.
Well, and I don't know the statistics or the number, but I certainly, have read a lot about the idea of schools teaching one way of learning, where kids have so many different, there's visual learners, there's, academic, there's book, there's people who grasp ideas and don't. And so you find a common way of kids learning, and that's what's taught, but there's lots of kids that fall outside of those lines.
Absolutely. So if you look at the evolution of education, really the sitting in little rows by age cohorts is really the way that we've been doing it for quite a long time, and that was a really great way of training people for the Industrial Revolution, where you're just going to be like a little widget going down a conveyor belt. Mm-hmm. But as of course now we know a whole lot more about learning, to your point, and it's Gardner's learning styles has opened up a great area of being more responsive to the individuality of children. And it's interesting, some people will kind of be embarrassed that their child's on an IEP, an individual education learning plan, and I'm like, I think every kid should be on an IEP, because what you're saying is that we're going to sculpture the system to be unique and individual. And I think it's the same when we talk about fit for kids. I would never say that Waldorf is better than Montessori, is better than public education, is better than private education, because every school brings some pros to it, and there's others that are drawbacks, and it really depends on the unique child. Some kids are really not a fit for Montessori, even though it's got other great qualities. And I've been to some wonderful public schools with terrific principals and teachers, and I've been to some lousy private schools, even though people are paying privately funded money for it. So you really have to do your research and your homework and find that best fit for your child.
Right. No pun intended.
Yeah.
Let's start at the very beginning, because there's a lot of parents who get very anxious as
Yeah.
they're having their children go into school for the first time. So I know in other episodes we've talked about preschoolers and you know, the younger age and a happy, snappy goodbye. Can you just kind of reiterate that really quickly?
Sure, just about making that transition time into the classroom as smooth as possible. And rather than prolong it by trying to get them settled and coming into the classroom with them and waiting for them to stop crying, which can go on to 5 and 10 minutes, I suggest a happy, snappy goodbye, whereby you understand that they're upset and that they're going to have to be away from you. But if you ask the teacher to help remove the child from your pant leg and you make a swift exit, the child actually gets calmer faster, and you make the period of transition shorter and less stressful for the child rather than elongating it.
And this could happen year after year. As you know, if kids are home with you for the summer and now they're transitioning back, that transition can be a little bit scary. So it doesn't matter what age, it's
Right.
getting back into that routine.
Yeah, and it's okay for kids to have tears. You know, doesn't mean you have to pull them out of school and homeschool.
Right.
Right. It just means, yep, this is tough, but you know what? You'll manage.
Yeah.
You'll manage. You'll settle in.
We've been asking folks for questions to have them email questions into you. So we have one here. My child is very well behaved at home, but the teacher reports he is being very disruptive and even aggressive at school. I don't understand where this behavior is coming from. We've talked to him about it, and every day he says he will be good, but there's a report home almost every day from the teacher of some problem he's caused. Help. He's only in grade 1, and I want to nip this in the bud.
So there's probably as many parents that have the exact opposite situation, where their kid is a total tyrant at home and they go for parent-teacher night, and it is such a pleasure to teach your little, you know, and you're like, really? I can't.
My child?
Yeah. I get no good behavior at home. What magic are you spinning? But it speaks to the idea that when we're trying to understand behavior, we have to see it in the social context in which it occurs. And the truth is, there's a different social context at home than on the school bus, than at recess, than the people that are in your classroom. So the fact that the child is having issues in the classroom tells me that social embeddedness, what's happening for him socially, is not working. He's discouraged somehow at school in a way that he is not discouraged in his performance and his relationships at home. So, you know, where can we start to probe around that? First thing I would ask the teacher, how does she get along with him? I mean, I want to know, I want to get a pulse on whether the teacher actually has a warm relationship with the child, because kids will know when their teacher likes them and doesn't like them. And if you feel like, you know, at home, everyone treats me well, but my teacher scowls and you know, I get in trouble with the teacher all the time, it starts to hurt the relationship, and now the child feels unliked, and that's going to create more acting out. Then I want to know whether they've got peer friends. How do they get along with other people? Because every kid needs to have that special friend. It doesn't have to be 100 friends, but they need to at least have one person to look forward to seeing. I want to see what their status is like in the classroom. Do they have some kind of a reputation in the classroom? And I certainly don't want the reputation to become he's the rough one. And then I would be looking for ways that child can make a positive contribution in the classroom. So does he have jobs and responsibility? Could he be the line leader? Could he be the person who feeds the gerbils? You know, something that gives him some positive status in that environment.
Right.
So I would start with those as kind of general probes, and then, you know, if you've got a good enough relationship with the teacher, you want to say, listen, we both want the same thing. I don't want you to have to be dealing with my child. I'm not sure why he's feeling discouraged. But here's how we can talk about how we could address things when it happens,
Right.
and see if they're open to some input on some of the child guidance techniques that we talk about, you know, on my website or through books about how to apply Adlerian principles in the classroom. And some teachers are really open to learning new ideas, and others are like, you know, I've been doing this for 30 years and don't tell me my business. So
Right.
you got to kind of take a pulse on where they're at in terms of the receptivity of that.
So we always had the opposite, because we have a son who would struggle, but he was so kind and happy in the classroom. And so it wasn't that he was coming home and being, the complete opposite. He was just exhausted from putting on a show.
Yes.
Instead of showing his struggles in the classroom. So it was the meltdown every day when he came home. And this is grade 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And so it's just that exhaustion of always having to be on and perform.
And grade 1 is a big transition. We try to keep play-based learning as long as possible. So you go from a day where you're really in these different activity centers and in more contextual learning through play, and then suddenly you got to sit in a desk and sit still, and like that's really difficult for some kids. And it's the first time where they might start to realize that they're getting some feedback that maybe they're not keeping up, and there could be an undiagnosed learning disability. There could be an eye or hearing issue that is only going to come to light now, and so there could be a bunch of things like that are going on as well. But I can say, telling a kid, "Are you going to be good today?" It's not helpful. It's not helpful because, and saying, "Why did you hit that kid?" is not helpful because kids don't know why they do what they do. It is pre-conscious behavior. So we can't have dialogues about those types of things. And it just makes him feel worse at the end of the day where it's like, no, I made a promise and I still ended up getting in trouble. We're getting more discouragement instead of better.
Well, and there's lots of schools who give out that green card or yellow or red.
Oh, I really hate those. They're all.
I know, that's why I brought it up.
The little school bus that moves along a line, which is like, to me, public shaming. All of these, and again, like this is where I'm saying I have compassion for the educators. That's what they've been trained to do. That's what they've been shown to do by the people who train them. So much of what has been informed in classroom education comes from a behavioralist model. And that is the dominant ideology. Does not mean that it is the correct way to deal with kids. So when I'm called in my private counseling practice, often I will work with the school and work with the teacher. And one of the first things I do is like, okay, that's got to stop right now. No charts, no sticker charts, no progress reports, no versions of the happy face. Oh, I had a frowny face today, I had a happy face. The first thing I want to do with the kid who's acting out in the classroom is to use encouragement. I was just having a conversation. Other fields call it appreciative inquiry. You can only build on a child's strengths. So I want to talk about what was right and what was good. And even if they misbehaved all day long, if I notice that they held the door open for a friend, that's the thing I'm going to say, hey, you really showed a kindness to your friend today by holding that door open. Good on you. That's what I'm going to focus on. Kids are not misbehaving constantly. There's times in the day when they're on task and doing the right thing. And I want to point that out and show my appreciation for that. Those are just discouraging. Kids see their little bus going along. They see the frowny faces, and they have no sense of agency over why that's happening. It's all pre-conscious behavior.
Right, and now it becomes a preconceived idea that I'm never going to get the happy face because I'm always a sad-faced kid.
Yeah.
That's just what I am.
Yep. So same thing, teachers. If you've got someone in your class, love them up. Try to build a bond with them. Send home, I call them love notes. Just those little noticings throughout the day. If you're going to write in their journals about the day's progress, I don't want to hear about how they disrupted, or that it was a bad day. I want to talk about all those things that were right and good so that the child's getting that feedback. And honestly, I think for, again, the double bind with teachers, they're also on the hook to make sure they never want to have a teacher ever be able to say, why wasn't I told? Why wasn't I informed? And what ends up happening is they end up over-disclosing every little infarction that happens. So what I would say is instead just be in contact with the parent to say, we're working on this. Why don't we meet every 2 weeks to give a bit of a progress report, but I'll stop with the dailies.
Right.
We're on this,
Right. Another question here. My daughter recently changed schools. She hates her new teacher. Frankly, I think the teacher doesn't like her very much either. So that's what you were talking about. But what happens, and so this is, asking how to improve matters, but there's lots of kids out there who all of a sudden, they start their new school year and they just don't click with the teacher or they don't like the new teacher.
Right. And so a couple things. So first of all, we this is interesting. The number one indicator of academic success for a child is the teacher-student ratio. That's out of our control unless...
Right.
But the second factor in academic success is the child's perception that the teacher likes them. So for the teachers out there, fake it till you make it, even if you've got somebody who you're not clicking with. But from the child's point of view, if you've got a teacher that you're not clicking with, really, it's a great learning opportunity to say, like in life, you're not going to love all your babysitters. You're not going to like all your bosses. You're going to be in this world with a whole lot of different type of people, and you're going to have to learn to get along with your fellow man, whether you like them or not. That we still need to respect other people, even if we don't particularly like them, because just mutual respect is just a requirement of life. And so, then you might ask your child, the student, what they might do to participate in warming up the friendship. Like, why do we always have to put it on the adult? Children make up half it's a relationship. It's a co-created experience. I mean, the child could either decide not to let it bug them so much, or they could decide that they might want to make some kind of friendly gesture towards. I wonder if, Madame Kudronecki would like it if you brought some cookies to class.
How did you pull
that was
one?
my grade 3 French teacher. Thank you very much. I thought I'd throw a little bilingual in there to keep us cross-cultural.
Wow.
Thank you very much for noticing. Madame Smith would have probably gone right under the radar. So, I mean, what can the child do to make some gesture towards their teacher and to realize that they also have a role in warming up or chilling relationships? So I might coach my child around that. And then there's always next year. Next year it'll be a whole new game, a whole new teacher. But I think it's problematic when parents become overly involved and, again, want to optimize childhood for their kids and say, oh, they don't like the teacher, they're not getting along, I'm going to ask the principal for a transfer. I think that's really, that's for extreme situations.
So it's learning more to adapt and deal with the situation than just
isn't that
fixing it,
right?
Quick fix.
Yeah, and again, so there's the resiliency piece that the child ends up learning.
So what happens when the parent doesn't like the teacher?
Yeah, I know, and that's more common too. Yeah. And again, the question is it that you just don't gel? She's just not the style that you like, or you really think there is incompetence in the job? And so I would say that the way to handle that is speak to the teacher first. Don't go over their head and speak to the principal. Speak to the teacher first. And don't hijack them at the door. Make an appointment to talk and give them some understanding of what the agenda is so that they can be prepared. And then try to have a mature conversation with an idea of problem solving towards making things better, and come with ideas for what you think would make things better. And then try it out and see whether or not anything creates an improvement. If it fails, then we can go to the next step in the ladder, which is then to go to the principal. And if that doesn't bring about the change then you want, then you'd go up to the superintendent. And so we just do that in a respectful way. But often a little conversation can change a lot.
Another question in dealing with homework. I know that's a problem for a lot of families. My son is in grade 7. Every night we have a fight about getting him to do his homework. It's become a nightly battle that makes 30 minutes of homework turn into hours of family fighting. It's like you're in my home.
Yeah.
It's like I wrote this question myself.
Well, so I'll tell you, again, my experience is working with a lot of families. You just have your family, you think it's just your issue. But when you hear that every single family spends the evening fighting with their kids about homework, you've got to ask yourself, are we making humanity a better place? Alfie Cohen has written a book, I've got it cited on my website on my resource page, that shows the research. It's not an opinion, this is research. Homework actually hurts learning. It is detrimental to the education of our children to give them the homework in the style of homework that goes home to our kids. And so now we're doing something that doesn't help their education, and it's shredding the family bond. Where did we ever think that this was a good idea? This drives me crazy. And in fact, there was a couple in Calgary that were lawyers that wrote a legal agreement with their kids' high school, because a lot of people say, oh, maybe no homework in elementary school, but by high school. High school students, lawyers wrote a contract with the school saying, you have to evaluate my children on something other than homework. We will not be participating in the homework regime, our family. We are going to spend it playing board games and skiing and doing family chores and those kinds of things. So no homework for us. School agreed. Kids did absolutely fine. Wow. I wish everyone would take on the same attitude. I wasn't quite that direct with my kids' school. I basically said, I don't like homework, I don't believe in homework, but it's your relationship with the school. Do as you please. And when you back off like that, what's amazing is that when there is nobody else to usurp and take over the responsibility, kids actually pick up the responsibility. So chances are, if she's got a child who is not doing his homework and she's fighting about that homework, that child knows that they've got their parents on the hook for this.
Right.
And a lot of times, especially if you have siblings, why would I possibly whip through my homework in 10 minutes cooperatively when I can fight with you and have you sitting on right beside me at the table, making sure I'm on task for a full half an hour, rather than playing with my baby sister? So a lot of kids learn to use that time to monopolize their parents' time, even though it's in conflict. So I would say helping your child learn the independence, and again, maybe some kids, especially if they've got executive functioning issues or whatever, they might need more structure piece that you can help, but we're trying to train them towards independence, and I want them to take ownership. It's your homework. I've already done grade 4. I've already completed grade 7. It's not my work to do. And in fact, I also don't think that you should correct their work. A lot of parents do their homework next to their kids, and when they get a word wrong on the spelling dictation, they correct the spelling. I want the teacher to see that my kid got 6 wrong, so that she can go, I think I taught that lesson yesterday and no one's picking up on it because all the homework that came back in has all these errors. I need to slow down and teach that lesson again. And certainly if you're somebody who's got a parent that doesn't have English as a second language, how are they supposed to read and interpret the textbooks and have that? So then I think we end up becoming divided around public education. Some people are getting an unfair advantage.
Well, I don't know how many times, especially now that we have 2 in grade 8, I don't know how many times they've asked me to help with something because they don't understand it. And I have to Google it first and watch the math tutorial on how to divide fractions.
And it's not the same.
No.
Like they teach math differently. I would confuse my kids by teaching my methodologies, and that's, again...
Or we can get to the answer, but that's not what they are getting the marks on. They're getting the marks on the process, and I have no idea how to get there. I know the end product.
Yeah. So I think that it's always problematic to be in a dual role with your child. Just the same way dual roles in life, can be very problematic. If you've got somebody who's a best friend and they're also a marriage counselor and you come to them to talk about marriage advice, you're being both their counselor and their friend. This is problematic. I mean, you can give some light advice, but the hard work needs to be done with somebody that they don't know. And your kid needs to come home from school and need to fall into the arms of a non-judgmental parent, not somebody who's tutoring, saying, why'd you get that wrong? And you're not trying hard enough. I think the people that choose to homeschool are they've got a very difficult task. And I'm not anti-homeschool, but boy, do you have to be very careful about your relationship ties.
Right. There's also the idea of some kids having homework and their siblings not. So now there's a little bit of a struggle of why some get to play all the time while others have to sit at the table and do their work.
'Cause life's not fair. Actually, I have a very funny story about that. So when my kids were little, at the end of the school year, they have this little like a scholastic book thing where you can get like a homework book. And my kids were like, can you buy this for me, Mommy? I'm like, no, it's the summer. I don't want you doing homework in the summer. We're going to the cottage. Well, their cousins were schooled in California where they have school all year, and they were coming back to Ontario, and their mom's a teacher, so they had to do their homework every day. They had to do the homework after breakfast before they could play at the cottage. And they would moan and cry, and my kids were like, I'll do it. So I bring this up because it's not so much about homework. The brain has 2 things it wants to do. It wants to be social and it wants to learn. But the minute you call it work and the minute you force someone to do it, that's when they lose joy and excitement. And so think about all those kids that loved sitting in your lap and reading little childhood stories at bedtime. And then suddenly it comes home in a little Ziploc bag and they're told they have to do it tonight, and it's now called reading homework, and they don't want to read. Because we just took it away from joy. So I think we need to be more joyful, more playful, less coercive, and have a little more trust that we, if anything, we want to keep our kids enthused. So homework to me is, let's go to the ROM. They've got this incredible exhibit. That's fun. I mean, there's lots of ways that our kids can continue learning throughout the year and into the evening, but it doesn't need to be on an 8.5 by 12 rote sheet that's making you regurgitate everything that you already know, which is what our style of homework is.
I'm going to slip one more question in here.
Yes.
The current debate in our house is whether or not to get our daughter assessed for possible learning disabilities. She struggles academically, but I don't want to give her the idea there is something wrong by running tests. You kind of started this episode with the idea of maybe everybody should have an IEP. Is that
maybe everyone should have an assessment.
Yes.
Not until I start my new assessment business, please.
Yes.
I don't have trouble with assessments. What I would say is, what I recommend to parents is that if you can't afford it, I would recommend a private assessment and go to somebody who, through word of mouth and referral, so that you know that you're going to a quality person. Those assessments don't have to be stressful for kids if you've got the right person. But then you own the information. And you can decide whether you want to share it with the school or not. Whereas if the school does it, then that's now on public file and it moves with your child. And you may not want them to see your child through that lens. We certainly know a lot about how expectation drives behavior. You know, I don't know if you had that famous study where the teachers were told that these were like gifted students and the other ones were remedial, and sure enough the teachers taught the gifted students differently, so they weren't gifted but their marks went up, and the ones that they were told were remedial, their marks went down, because we treat kids differently based on what we know from that. So but I do think that if the assessment means that you're going to get some form of accommodation, not out of curiosity, but some form of accommodation that would really make sense for your child, then I think it's good to know. Yeah.
And the idea of, if there's more than one child, really looking at each one individually, because they all learn differently.
And, I think we have to normalize that to kids, that everybody has different strengths. And I joke with my kids that we don't criticize polar bears because they don't fly. Polar bears are good at swimming. They're good at having a lot of blubber to handle this cold weather. Everybody has different strengths. And so
that's me.
You said that's not true. Self-deprecating humor on the parenting show. So everyone is different. We all have different strengths. It's how you use that strength. So the fact that somebody else has struggles with math, you struggle with spelling. Somebody else is great at memory work, and other people have trouble processing it. We all have unique brains, just like we have different color hair and different color eyes and different color skin. Everyone's different on the inside and the outside. And so I don't want them to feel less than. They're just unique and different. But always fine. Yeah.
More information is available. See how quickly a half hour goes.
I know. Yes. Thank you for the great questions, everybody. And do have a good school year.
Yes. More information is available on your website.
Yes.
And there's lots of resources that are available, not only for other books and information, but also you have a lot of blogs and information.
That's right. Well, I try to post a video a week, both on my website and on my YouTube channel. And so just type in your problem, and hopefully I've posted on it recently.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And thank you to everybody at home for watching the parenting show today. Of course, you can find out more information on rogerstv.com. That's information about all of the shows that exist on Rogers, but all of the episodes that we have here for the parenting show. On behalf of Alyson and myself, everyone here, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.